Rebecca Dishman was born April 30th, 1988. She grew up in Maryville, Tennessee, and although not many details about her childhood are available, it is believed she had a reasonably good early life. Her parents were stable, and Rebecca loved them dearly. According to Rebecca, her father was heavily involved with religion and a prominent member of the church they attended. This had led her to become somewhat rebellious as a teenager. She looked into things like Satanism and Wiccan as a means to go against her father's beliefs. Rebecca's life would change forever when she was 18 years old. In her final year of high school, both of her parents pass away. I couldn't find their cause of death, but what is documented is from this point on, Rebecca's life becomes quite chaotic. Her auntie and uncle take the girl in, but according to Rebecca, the situation living with them was turbulent and only lasted about a year. At this point in her life, Rebecca had a lot of trouble holding on to jobs and was let go from 3 separate places of employment within a short period of time. These jobs, described by Rebecca, were a CNA, a waitress, and a cashier. After failing to hold on to employment, she then began attaching herself to men without caution. She reports that these men would look after and provide for her, paying for phone bills, food and more, and in return she would provide them sex. It's unclear if the relationships with these men overlapped one another or were rapid-fire consecutive. But what we do know is by about the age of 21, she had 5 of these relationships, where each of these men Rebecca describes as her fiancés. Whilst living in the household with her aunt and uncle, she gets into a number of arguments with them regarding one of these men whom she was seeing at the time.
So you stayed with them for about a year. Did you leave voluntarily?
They kind of just washed their hands of me. They got tired of me.
Do you know why that was?
Because I was with another fiance and had decided to move in with him, and they weren't happy.
How did that turn out? Did you marry that person?
No.
Did you stay living with them?
No, they moved.
Okay. So where did you go from there?
I ended up staying with my best friend, Tabitha Sparks, and she ended up kicking me out as well. I moved back in with Crystal Mays, which is the mother of Austin, my first fiance.
And did you stay living there for a while?
Yes, until they kicked me back out.
So what was the next place?
Rick and Jenny Fry.
Did you stay there for a significant amount of time?
Yes.
When did you leave that location?
I believe it was August, September of 2019.
And what happened that made you leave there?
I had met Sean on Facebook and decided to move in with him 2 weeks after meeting him.
The person that Rebecca had met on Facebook and subsequently moved in with after 2 weeks of online communications is Sean Finnegan, an older man in his early 50s. Sean lives in a duplex house within a location that has a number of other identical apartments surrounding. Residing with him is his elderly mother, Frances, who is quite ill and requires at-home hospice care. Sean supports and looks after her in between working a job as a cook at a nearby bar called the Pint House. He's described as a reliable employee who is always punctual and a good worker. The shift he normally works sees the man starting at 5 p.m. and then finishing at 5 a.m. Many of his co-workers recall that after his shifts, he would often hang out with them for a little as they all discussed a range of topics, the most common being relationships. Sean was known to enjoy the services of prostitutes, and he would brag to his co-workers how he has multiple girlfriends. Despite those details, no one who worked with him thought much of this and viewed him as a fairly normal guy. Not much is known about Sean's background, childhood, or family history, but there are 2 important pieces of information which I found. The first being, according to the ex-wife of Sean's brother, when the man was a child, he sustained heavy physical and sexual abuse, The second detail of interest is a police report and criminal history. In 2015, when Sean was 47 years old, he was charged with aggravated rape and kidnapping. Sean had taken a woman from her home and held her against her will at his place for 2 days, during which he repeatedly sexually assaulted her. This woman escaped by convincing the man that her 11-year-old son was home alone and they needed to go check on him. Sean agrees to drive her back to her house, but on the way, the woman is able to get out of the vehicle and flee. She runs straight to the police and reports what had happened. Law enforcement search his home and find evidence to corroborate the woman's story. So Rebecca Dishman meets Sean Finnegan via Facebook, and they communicate for 2 weeks before she packs up her belongings, and in September of 2019, she moves in with him in his Oak Ridge home.
Our relationship was kind of fast, and within the 2 weeks I decided to move in because the people that I was staying with, I felt like I was scared that they would end up kicking me out, and I was hoping that things would work out better.
You said that he had convinced you to move in. Could you tell us about that, please?
He wanted me to live with him and be his girl.
And did you like that idea?
Yes.
What were you doing at the time? You said he was working at the Pine House. What did you do?
I stayed at home, and I was a stay-at-home girlfriend.
Shortly after getting to Sean's, Rebecca befriends one of the neighbors, a woman by the name of Mahogany Picot. Mahogany has known Sean for around 3 years, and she lives in a building that's directly across from where Rebecca and Sean are living. In the house with Mahogany is her husband and 2 children. Prior to Rebecca's arrival, Mahogany had formed a bit of a friendship with Sean over the years, as they both enjoyed smoking pot over at his place. Mahogany preferred to do it there, away from her home, so that her children weren't exposed to drug use. This is how she initially became aware that Rebecca had moved in and was now Sean's girlfriend. Although Mahogany's husband doesn't appear to have any issue with who Mahogany is hanging out with or what she's doing, he himself doesn't get involved with the lives of his neighbors.
How long did you live at 302 Florida Avenue?
I don't even know for sure. That's a life question.
Okay. Years, months?
Yeah, years.
Mr. Pico, do you venture out and get to know your neighbors at all?
No.
Why is that?
I grew up in a neighborhood where you don't talk to your neighbors.
Okay.
You don't need to know them.
From Illinois?
Yes.
Chicago, that's the way
Yes.
you know your neighbors? Okay. Is your wife the same personality?
No, my wife's a social butterfly.
Okay. And so in terms of connections or social interactions with neighbors, yours, how would you describe yours versus your wife's?
If I see them, I'll say hi and go on.
Okay.
She talks to them.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity at any point to get to know your neighbors in the building behind you?
Because of my wife, yes.
Okay. So how so?
Partially.
What do you mean because of your wife?
Well, I don't talk to them. I don't care to know people. And if she talks to them, I end up eventually having to.
And as far as your husband is concerned, does he interact with neighbors and folks in that nature?
No.
No. How come?
He likes to mind his business.
Okay. And do you follow suit?
No.
Over time, Rebecca and Mahogany hang out more and more, and spend a fair bit of time with one another both at Sean's house when he's at work, and over at Mahogany's. They would go on grocery shopping trips together, and enjoyed smoking weed when hanging out. After Sean finished work, on occasion he would visit his neighbor's house, and they all hang out together. As Rebecca became ingrained with the local neighborhood, those living around her had started to form an opinion of what sort of person she was.
Rebecca is more, she goes about doing things slower. She don't really understand stuff unless you really have to explain it to her.
Okay.
She's more like one of my children.
She would cling to anybody that gave her attention. That was nice to her.
Tell us what you mean by that.
I had a friend that was staying with me, and he would just be nice to her in passing, and she thought he was into her.
To what she thought and said.
How did she behave around him?
She would get giddy.
She seemed sweet,
Okay.
kind of, I guess you would say slower than most people,
Okay.
intelligent-wise.
She was simple,
Okay.
kid-like.
Okay. How so?
She just didn't have your typical adult. I don't. She dressed kid-like. She'd be excited about stuff my kids would be excited about.
Okay.
She was just very simple.
Turning your attention to Halloween, did you have specific interaction with Rebecca on Halloween?
She dressed up on Halloween. I took her trick-or-treating.
She seemed like she needed a lot of help in taking care of herself,
Okay.
as in simple.
Although at first Rebecca felt quite comfortable living with Sean, she reports that things quickly became abusive.
The first couple weeks were okay, and I went to go take a shower, and that was our first argument. I had asked to borrow his phone to be on Facebook, and one of my exes texted, and it led to him getting angry and shoving me in the shower. I ended up cutting my leg pretty bad, and that led to my first punishment. Later, when I got out of the shower, he told me that, he wasn't happy with me, and there was consequences to that. Like, I had to have sex with him, and he tied my hands to the bed and scratched me down my back and made me bleed.
Was that a normal part of your relationship with Sean Finnegan?
I didn't know that it would come to that extent. Like, I knew it would be kinky sex, but I didn't think it would be violent as it was.
What do you mean by that?
He was a lot more aggressive than I thought he was gonna be. I wasn't expecting it to be as harsh as it was. The punishments and just the dominant and power role, I guess you could say.
What kind of things would he do then as punishment?
Anywhere from putting me in a dog cage and urinating on me and climaxing, defecating on me, chaining me up with a dog chain, using box cutters on me, sodomizing me, using torch ladders on me, just very violent punishments.
So you say he used chains on you.
Yes.
How specifically were they used on you?
It was wrapped around my neck with a padlock, and he made me walk on all fours and act like a dog.
Okay. And the same thing, he would put you in the dog cage.
Yes.
Okay. You said he used box cutter? Is that what you
Yes.
said? How did he use
used
that?
it on my inner thighs and cut
What kind of torch?
a torch lighter.
Could you describe what that looks like? How is that different than like a cigarette lighter?
It's usually used for like lighting grills and
Okay.
other things like that.
And what would he do with that?
He made me perform oral sex on him, and he had his leg over my throat and was burning my shoulder. I was his little girl, and I called him Daddy.
Did you love him?
Yes,
Do you still love him?
yes.
The relationship dynamic between Sean and Rebecca is described by both of them as a BDSM Dom-Sub partnership. But as you heard, Rebecca found herself feeling more and more confronted by what was happening. It's unclear whether she vocalized her concerns to Sean or not, but what she does say is that she had begun to greatly fear him. He held the power of the household, and she didn't want to go against that or upset him in any way. Although at this point in time she hadn't disclosed to Mahogany, the person she spent the most time with, that her relationship was heading in a pretty scary direction. Mahogany and her husband had noticed that Sean was exhibiting signs that he was very controlling over Rebecca. They say that at times Sean would come over to their place whilst Rebecca was there, and he would demand that she come home immediately. Rebecca would always abide by his commands without question. Furthermore, Sean was aware that Rebecca used Mahogany's phone to communicate with others, seeing as he was on the receiving end of many of these messages. But Mahogany and her husband Colt recall Rebecca telling them that she hadn't gotten her own phone yet because Sean wouldn't allow it. It's around late December, close to Christmas, when one day Rebecca is home waiting for Sean to get back from work. When he arrives, she notices that Sean had another woman with him. According to Rebecca, this wasn't particularly uncommon, as throughout their relationship, Sean had a number of other girls that he brought home. Some are said to be ex-girlfriends, while others are prostitutes. When these women came around, all three parties engaged in sexual activity, and some of them even stayed at the house for a longer period of time. One woman named Phoenix stayed there for a month. Another, Tasha, stayed a couple of weeks. And a third, Sean's ex-girlfriend Sarah, she was in and out all the time with her 2 infant children. On the late December date, the woman who was with Sean was 36-year-old Jennifer Paxton, a prostitute and a heroin addict who has a troubled past. She had her first child at 15 years of age, and eventually would go on to have 6 more over the course of her life. Throughout the years, she lost custody over all of these children. Following the removal of the children from her care, Jennifer ended up spiraling into drug addiction, and that's when she became hooked on heroin. By 36, she was homeless, and her friends and family members recall, at all hours, seeing her walking the streets of Knoxville where she lived. Despite her struggles and poor decisions, she was very much loved by her family, especially her grandmother, who had an incredibly close relationship with Jennifer all throughout her life. Jennifer was always allowed in her home, and she would go around from time to time to shower, eat, and do laundry. She also consistently visited her grandmother on the 3rd of every month, because this was when a social security check for the elderly woman came in. Jennifer would be there like clockwork, asking if she could have some of that money, and her grandmother always obliged. Jennifer's aunt, who lived with the grandmother, and who also cared about Jennifer deeply, regrettably was unable to allow Jennifer to stay at their residence for longer than short visits. The reason was that there were young children living there as well, and the auntie did not want them to be exposed to a lifestyle of drug addiction. Jennifer's cousin, who mentions she shared a relationship with her that was more like sisters, she had offered a place to live, but Jennifer refused each time, opting for a homeless settlement in the woods. This cousin believes it was because of Jennifer's addiction that she chose the woods. It was much easier for her to use on the streets, away from judgmental or hurting eyes. Due to drug possession and prostitution, Jennifer found herself in trouble with the law on more than one occasion. Her family reports that they actually felt a sense of relief whenever they knew she was behind bars, because at least then they knew where she was and that she was safe. They always feared that something bad could happen to her when she was out living on the streets. The Pint House, where Sean worked, generally didn't allow homeless people to use their bathroom facilities, but they had made exceptions for Jennifer in the past, seeing as she frequently spent time around that location and they felt comfortable with her. It's here that she meets Sean Finnegan, and as you may have put together, she gets into a vehicle with him around Christmas time of 2019, and is taken to his house, where his stay-at-home girlfriend, Rebecca, lives.
Could you tell us about what happened when Jennifer came in?
She came in and I was putting the bed up and I was confused because I didn't know the woman, and Sean later came in and introduced us together. She made breakfast and asked to take a shower, and once she went to go take a shower, Sean asked me, "Do you want to kidnap her?" I knew that I had no say-so really in the matter, that he controlled the house, and anything I said, even if it was a no, that it wouldn't have mattered anyways.
Well, I heard what sounded like a fight next door originating in the living room. We heard beating and banging,
What specifically did you hear?
like just a bunch of commotion, like stuff being slung around. I mean, just like a fight going on.
Okay. In which room of the house?
The living room,
Okay.
right behind my fireplace.
And how long did that go on? The beating and the banging and the commotion?
I can't say for sure. I mean, for a little while.
And do you recall what time of the day it was?
I don't know exactly for sure the time of day, but I want to say around anywhere between 11 and 1
Okay.
p.m. Then I heard it move to the kitchen just very briefly, and then it moved right back to the living room. And
Okay.
then not long after that, it got silent for a few minutes. And then just a short time passed, and I heard a little bit more commotion upstairs in the bedroom, the main master bedroom. It wasn't long until I was hearing like a bed hitting the wall, like someone having sex.
Okay. And is that what you interpreted it as?
Yes.
And how long did that go on?
That went on for a little while, and then over the next 3 or 4 days, it was various times of the day that I would hear the bed hitting the wall. I can't tell you exact times, I don't know.
Leading into the early months of 2020, Jennifer's family began to worry, seeing as they hadn't heard from her in an unusual amount of time. It wasn't uncommon for her to be difficult to contact, but this was the first time that she went missing for this long. She no longer came around on the 3rd of each month to collect money from her grandmother, and sightings of her on the street had stopped. She wasn't in the homeless camp where she normally stayed, not in rehab centers, hospitals, or even police stations. Her family checked them all and more. The last known contact was on December 23rd, when police were called to take her away, as she appeared to be publicly intoxicated and dancing in the street. Upon her release after sobering up, it's as though she had vanished. A missing persons investigation is conducted, but to no avail, and for many months, the family tirelessly search for her whereabouts. Throughout this period of time, things seem to be happening as usual in Sean's house. Sean goes to work each day for his regular shift. His mother deteriorates from a terminal illness in her upstairs bedroom, and Rebecca stays home, only leaving the house to hang out with Mahogany. Rebecca doesn't have a functional phone, seeing as her current one was somewhat damaged, and her ex-fiancé also stopped paying the phone bill. To communicate with others, and Sean whilst he's at work, Rebecca often borrows Mahogany's phone when they're hanging out, and uses it to send messages.
We'll do the first text here. We'll read this, okay? Yes, Daddy, I want it very much. I want to drool all over it and choke on it like a dirty little slut does for his master. Okay? Did you send that text?
No.
Although Mahogany was aware that her phone was being used to contact Sean, she had no clue as to what the contents of those messages were, due to Rebecca deleting them prior to handing the phone back. Over the span of around 8 months, hundreds of these messages have been recovered from Sean's phone that are intensely sexual in nature, including a range of explicit photographs that Rebecca had sent to Sean. A strange point of interest is that in early January of 2020, Mahogany went over to hang out at Sean's house, and she noticed a brand new stand-up freezer, oddly positioned with the door facing the wall in the living room.
Did you inquire of Mr. Finnegan? Why do you have a freezer in your living room?
Yes.
And what did he say?
My landlord had it ordered to the wrong apartments. And I was like, okay, I get it, I understand that. So he's let it sit there until you come and got it.
Okay. And how long did that freezer stay in the living room, to your knowledge?
The next time I went over, it was gone, so I figured the landlord come and got it.
Could you please tell us your name and tell us where you work?
My name is Daniel Miller, and I work at Rent a Center in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
While working there, have you come across somebody that you know is Sean Finnegan?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you describe your interactions with Mr. Finnegan?
Run-of-the-mill customer would come in every Friday, make his payment, say hello, say goodbye. Never had an issue with him. Was just a good all-around customer.
Did you have occasion to have an interaction with him in December of 2019?
Yes. He came into the store looking for a deep freezer when he made his payment. I think Brittany was working there at the time. She typed it up, and then we delivered it the next day.
Throughout the 8 months following Christmas, Rebecca claims the abuse was getting so bad from Sean, she did try to get out in a few different ways. One of these attempts to escape saw her approach a neighbor that she only knew in passing, and using this neighbor's phone, she set up a fake Facebook profile. This profile was then used to contact an ex-fiancé where Rebecca asked him to help her get away from Sean. The neighbor does confirm that this indeed happened, but as soon as Rebecca left her company, she didn't want to get involved in other people's lives, so that account was deleted, and nothing came of it. Whenever Rebecca spends time with Mahogany, Mahogany is becoming more and more concerned about Rebecca's well-being. Close to August of 2020, she notices bruises on Rebecca's face, and after much questioning, Rebecca eventually admits that they came from Sean. She says that injuries such as this generally were sustained during rough sex, and Mahogany does feel conflicted. She's unsure what to do, and whether she should take steps to get Rebecca away from Sean. On one hand, she could clearly see bruising, and Rebecca was making it obvious that she was unhappy. But on the other hand, Mahogany didn't know if Rebecca was exaggerating scenarios and emotions like she had done in the past. She says that she's aware sex can get rough, and she didn't know if these bruises were actual signs of a dangerously abusive relationship, or just tall tales from a simple, childish young woman who consensually engaged in very rough sex. This dilemma was the reason Mahogany never contacted authorities to help her friend.
But for the 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, suppose these bruises and stuff, and she's telling you what's happening, right? But it wasn't to a level where you thought something had to happen at that moment, right?
Right, because some of it was sexual.
Right. And so people that have rough sex sometimes have bruises.
Correct.
Yeah.
Another factor which saw Mahogany apprehensive to contact the police was due to her husband adamantly being against getting involved in the lives and relationships of others. Mahogany mulls over what to do up until the date, August 5th, 2020. The day prior, Rebecca had indicated to Mahogany that the abuse was getting so bad, she now genuinely feared for her life and was unsure if Sean was going to kill her. Mahogany expresses deep concern for Rebecca's well-being to her husband, and he decides to put his personal feelings aside, and he agrees to get involved. He finds a woman's shelter online that is open to taking new people in, but it's a bit of a drive out of town. A plan is set in motion, and the next day when Sean is at work, Rebecca packs up all of her belongings and jumps in a vehicle with Mahogany, where she is then driven to meet up with a representative from this woman's shelter. The two women were expecting to meet this representative to discuss Rebecca's situation, but upon getting to the planned location, the lady never arrives. Rebecca becomes panicked, fearing that she had nowhere to go and that Sean would be livid once he discovers her attempt to leave. She appears to have an anxiety attack, and according to Mahogany, whether intentional or not, Rebecca starts to reveal very troubling details regarding a situation that occurred back in December 2019 when a woman named Jennifer was at their place. Rebecca's story starts at that point you heard earlier, where she claims Sean asked her if they should kidnap their guest. Following that conversation, Jennifer had taken a shower to freshen up, and this is where we pick back up with Rebecca's story of what had happened.
Okay, so what happened when she got out of the shower?
She ate breakfast and we were talking, and after she ate breakfast, he, walked her over towards the back door and was showing her a baseball bat. And then he started hitting her over the head. And I went into shock, and he yelled at me to go upstairs because his mother was coming down for her medication. I went upstairs and I told her to stay in the room because I didn't want her to see what was going on.
And did she do that? Do what you asked her to do at that point?
She fussed at me and went back to bed.
And what did you do?
By the time I got downstairs, they were fighting. Jennifer had the fire grate over her to protect her, and there was blood on the floor. He was disgrading her. He ripped her pants down and was screaming at her, and he said, "Why don't you shave?" And she started crying, and he just spat on her and was really aggressive towards her. At one point, he told me to get on one side and he got on the other, and both of us went up the stairs with her and walked her to his bedroom.
She's conscious.
Yes.
At this point still. So you walk up the stairs. What happens when you get up there?
He locks the door and lays her on the floor on my side of the bed, and he makes her perform oral sex on him. And I'm forced to watch.
Could you tell us where his penis is?
He put his penis in her mouth and ripped her clothes.
And how long did that continue?
Until he got angry and pulled my shirt down and made me finish.
And what do you mean by he made you finish?
He wasn't satisfied with her, and he made me perform oral on him.
And what happened at the conclusion?
He went downstairs to clean up the blood and told me to watch her to make sure she didn't leave the room.
And what happens when he comes back up?
He grabs her and chains her to the side of his bed and tells me he has to leave for work and kisses me goodbye and leaves me there with her and tells me not to leave the house, to keep her there if anything happens, to take care of it, keep her from yelling.
Did you have any conversations with her in this period of time?
Yes, as I was feeding her and giving her drinks and letting her smoke, we talked a little bit.
Did you try to let her go?
At one point.
Tell us about that.
I took a knife, like a kitchen knife, and tried to pop the locks, and I cut the zip ties off, and it led to Sean getting angry with me.
Were there anything else that he did sexually at any point to Miss Paxton?
He force my adult toys inside of her and force his fingers on her and force me to watch. And also, at one point, she was on the floor and he was behind me and he forced me to climax over her.
And when you say he forced you to climax, what do you mean by that?
He physically, aggressively rubbed me until I climaxed.
And what did he do at your climax?
She was revolted by it, and she said I was gonna throw up, and he slapped her across the face, and I just shut down and left.
When you say you left, where did you go?
I went downstairs.
Okay. We're talking about you going to sleep. Where is she?
In the floor, beside Sean.
Chained to the bed?
Yes.
Did you ever have a key to those padlocks?
No.
So during the day, since you don't have a key, what do you do about Miss Paxton if she has to relieve herself or go to the bathroom?
There was a cigarette pill outside that I used for her to use the bathroom in. And she had to wear adult briefs.
Did Miss Paxton ask to leave?
Yes.
What could you do about that?
I told her that I wish I could let her leave, but I didn't have any way of letting her go.
Did she ever tell Mr. Finnegan she needed to leave or wanted to leave?
Yes.
What was his reaction?
He told her that she wasn't going anywhere, that she was going to die. She started crying.
And what did he do?
He just kicked her and spat on her and was really aggressive.
Jennifer is held captive for close to 4 days from when she first arrived at the house. On the 4th day, Rebecca claims that Sean had come home from work and had a bag of supplies with him. There were shower curtains, cloths and cleaning supplies. Initially thinking Sean was preparing for a big house clean, she soon learns that he had another use for these items. Over the course of the next few hours, Sean would cut and strangle the chained-up Jennifer using a shoestring. He would bring her close to death and then relieve the pressure to ensure she stayed alive. At one point, whilst this is happening, he commands Rebecca to shower Jennifer to clean the blood and bodily fluids off of her, and following this, Sean takes the prisoner back to the bedroom and leaves Rebecca cleaning blood around the bathroom where the shower was located. Whilst Rebecca is cleaning, she hears Sean yell for her to come to the bedroom with him, and she abides.
And I came in and he told me to lock the door, and as I walked in, he was straddled over her, strangling her with a shoestring, and told me to help him, and I just shut down and sat on the bed and just gave up, essentially.
How long did this go on?
For hours. He would start and stop, take breaks in between, and he wouldn't allow me to leave the room to empty the ashtray or anything, and I just sat on the bed.
So was he smoking?
Yes.
In between while this is going on? Were you?
Yes.
What finally concluded this episode?
He went to empty the ashtray, and she was taking her last breath, and I got on my hands and knees and told her goodbye because I knew she was dying. And he came back inside and slapped me across the face. She takes her last breath and she just dies.
Sean goes to work, and when he comes home, he and Rebecca clean up any blood that's in the bedroom. They then both carry Jennifer downstairs and place her in a stand-up freezer which had recently been delivered to the house. Rebecca is not sure where the freezer came from, but she does know that it wasn't there for long prior to Jennifer's death. After placing her in the freezer, Sean turns it around so that the door is facing the wall and presses it right up against there so that it can't be opened. Over the next few days, Rebecca claims that Sean becomes increasingly paranoid that someone might visit the house whilst he's not there, and they would open the freezer out of curiosity, thus uncovering the body. Due to his paranoia, Rebecca and Sean take Jennifer's frozen body out of the freezer and move it upstairs. They relocate the appliance to a closet in the bedroom. Power is run to it using an extension cord, and Sean purchases a lock for this closet door, seeing as it didn't have one previously. Once the freezer is in place, they both attempt to put Jennifer's frozen body back into it.
He forced her body to go inside of the freezer, and she made a noise, like snapping noise, and blood went on me, and it freaked me out.
This is where Jennifer's body stayed for the next 8 months, and throughout this period, Rebecca claims that Sean did some truly disturbing things.
There was 1 or 2 times that I caught him masturbating to Jennifer.
Could you describe that scene for us?
The first time I was taking a shower, and I came in to put my dirty clothes in the hamper, and he was masturbating, and he held out his hand, and I was confused as to what it was until I looked over and he had cut off her nose and intimate areas.
And what did you do when you walked in and saw that?
It freaked me out. I ran downstairs and was almost outside of the door, but he yelled at me to get back inside.
What happened after that?
I went upstairs. He closed the door and made me perform oral sex on him because it aroused him.
Could you repeat that last part?
Because it aroused him.
That summarizes Rebecca's version of events regarding what happened to Jennifer Paxton. And this brings us back to the moment where Mahogany is attempting to help Rebecca get into a woman's shelter. After the representative from the shelter didn't show and Rebecca panicked, she tells Mahogany much of what you just heard, and some more.
She also told me that that Sean tried to was going to kidnap one of his friend's daughters, teenage daughter. They was getting ready to leave a buddy of his house, and he wanted Becca to get the back seat. So when his daughter came out by the car, that Sean could throw her in the back of the car and Becca could hold her down to help kidnap her. But one of the men that was there at the house that they was visiting come out, and it didn't go through.
What else did she tell you?
She said that Sean made her have oral sex with kids that they was babysitting, both of them, and that they was just babies.
Did she tell you anything else about what he did to her?
To Rebecca?
Yes.
Yes, that he would chain her up to a bed and brutally I'm sorry, I have to say
That's
this.
okay.
Force adult toys in her body. And when he would be mad at her, he said that sometimes he would try to shove parts of Jennifer's body in her mouth.
Meanwhile, back at Sean's house, when Rebecca was leaving with her belongings, Sean's mother, Frances, was screaming and yelling at her from the upper floor window, saying that she was going to tell Sean what's going on. Mahogany's husband saw this happening, and at this point had received a phone call from his wife, who shared the disturbing details with him regarding a body possibly being in Sean's freezer. Very shortly after that phone call, Sean arrives back home.
Shortly after that, Sean come pulling in the driveway like a madman. He knocked on my back door and asked me where she took her and told me that I ruined his life and that I had no right to get involved. Basically, I told him he could go back to his apartment. I don't know where she took him or took her, and he told me that he would kill me. I called the Oak Ridge Police Department, and when they showed up, he had made it a point to come from his apartment to the front of my apartment.
So he was obviously upset because his girlfriend was being transported to a shelter, and just didn't want everybody in his business, from what he stated. And that was it on the whole disturbance portion.
Did you inquire at any point, based on information you had received, about anything unusual that might be in his house?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell us about that, please?
Yes, so Mr. Peacoat had made a statement that there may be a body inside the residence in a freezer. And then when I asked Mr. Finnegan, he said, there ain't no body, and that's bullshit.
The officer who is speaking to both Sean and Colt leaves the area, seeing as the reason for the call-out was a neighborhood disturbance, and that appeared to have been resolved. As that police interaction was occurring, Rebecca is at a police station where an interview with her was being conducted by detectives. At this point, almost immediately after the first officer completed his call-out, as a result of information actively being provided by Rebecca in her interview, multiple marked and unmarked police cars are stationed around Sean's house to follow his movements. Over the course of the next few hours, Sean leaves the house only once to go to a gas station where he purchases some snacks and then returns home. Nobody else entered or exited the home. The interview with Rebecca goes on for many hours as detectives question her about all of the details regarding this body in the freezer.
She was calm, open to conversation in her body language and her words, but I noted that she was generally emotionally flat in her response.
And she was talking about fairly disgusting things. Some of the stuff we're talking about, a body in a freezer and those sort of things, right?
There were things that said that were in fact disturbing, yes.
But she was flat through the whole thing.
She was.
Once Rebecca's interview is over, and the detectives hear much of what you heard during her testimony, at 4:26 a.m. on August the 5th, a SWAT team enters Sean's place, searching for a frozen body.
First they went upstairs to the bedroom where the body was supposed to be at. And upstairs they did locate the upright freezer, the white one, but there was no one. There was not a body inside the freezer. There was a pizza box, or there weren't a pizza box in there.
What do you do next?
I just sat there for a minute, and because the house was just so immaculate, or it was pristine, everything was very organized. It was well kept, tidy. And I just looked around and just observed the room. And I turned around and I looked at the bed. And what was so odd to me was there was something protruding outside under the bed on the left side. And curious, so I knelt down, got beside the bed, lifted the cover up, and I seen this, it was like a gray-like cover, and then I kept looking up under, and I touched it, put my hand up under there, and I said, oh man, that's cold. And it was a black plastic bag, and it was cold to the touch, and which was, kind of odd. Why would somebody put something up under the bed that's real cold when you got a freezer? And touched it, and I yelled out to the rest of the team. I said, I think I found her. At that time, we pulled up the mattress, and there she was. There was a there was a naked woman with plastic bags covering her lower portion.
And the bag did not cover her top portion?
No, sir.
Okay. Could you see her face?
Yes, sir. You could see her face. Her face was exposed. I was startled, to say the least. She was intact, but there was her nose was missing.
In addition to finding the frozen body, which is later identified to be Jennifer Paxton, in line with what Rebecca told them, law enforcement also recovered dog leashes and collars, multiple chains of varying sizes with padlocks, a fireball whiskey bucket which was used to defecate in, and of course, the large white stand-up freezer. Sean is immediately taken in for questioning. The audio quality associated with this interview is unfortunately unlistenable, but we do have statements made from the interviewing detective who summarizes what was said.
The first thing that he said to me was that he had met this girl where he worked at the Pine House in Knoxville, and she agreed to go back to the house with him. Said that she willingly came back to the house, and said that they had sex upstairs in the bedroom, and he needed to use the bathroom and urinate, not the terminology used, but for the courtroom purposes, to urinate, and she wanted to take a shower and get cleaned up. And while he was urinating, she had went back downstairs naked, and when he came down the stairs, he heard screaming. And he initially told me that Rebecca had hit her with a baseball bat. And then he said he flipped out and says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" Then he told me that Rebecca cleaned up the blood from where she was hit in the head with a baseball bat. And that the girl just voluntarily walked up the stairs with them, back up into the bedroom. His initial statement was, "We brought her up the stairs," but then later he said that she just walked up the stairs, past his mother wearing a hoodie, which is very conflicting.
Okay. Did he make any statements about the freezer?
He did. He said he rented the freezer and had it delivered to his house. I found it a bit odd that you have a freezer delivered to the upstairs bedroom closet, but that's where he said he needed to put it so his mother wouldn't see it.
Did he make any statements about what had happened to Jennifer Paxton's clothes?
He said he disposed of the clothing. He said that he got rid of the clothing, and I asked him, was that because it was evidence? He said yes, he didn't want to get in trouble. He didn't want to go to jail.
Did he say anything about the baseball bat?
He did. He said he got rid of the baseball bat, and he said it was long gone. He got rid of it early.
Did he make any statements regarding the victim being restrained?
He did. He initially said that Rebecca had chained her up, and I made the comment, chained her like a dog. And he said that Rebecca chained her to the bed, but that he had tied her up using strings that he had laying around the house. He later said about the chain that he allowed Jennifer to go to the bathroom. And then he said that Rebecca told him to put the chain back around her neck, so he wrapped the chain around her neck, but he indicated that Rebecca was the one that put the lock on it, taking some of it away from himself.
Seeing that video, and I believe there's an accurate representation of the interaction that you had with Mr. Finnegan on that
Yes,
early morning.
Yes, ma'am, it is. And I actually, first time in a couple of years, watched it last night, and it kept me up all night.
Essentially, Sean's story to the police is that he had met Jennifer at the bar where he worked, and he brought her back to his place so that they could have sex. They do so, and when it's over, Jennifer was going to stay with them for a day or two. At some point while Jennifer was there, he claims that Rebecca attacked Jennifer with a baseball bat for no reason and had inflicted a number of cut wounds on her using a knife. Jennifer was severely injured, but still alive, and it's at this point that he panicked. Under pressure, he makes the decision to chain her up by the neck and shackle her to his bed. His hope was that he could nurse her back to health, and all of this would blow over once her injuries healed. Over the next few days, he continues to go to work, and when he got home on the final day, Jennifer was dead. Rebecca had strangled her with shoestrings. It's at this point he put Jennifer's body in the freezer and moves it up into the closet where he locked it away so that no one would ever find out what happened. Although admitting to being involved in more than one way, he firmly denies being the one who attacked and killed Jennifer. That was all Rebecca, according to him. Following this interview, an autopsy is performed on Jennifer's body. It's quite a difficult one, due to the immense amount of injuries sustained and the frozen state which she came in.
When she came, actually, we had to wait a couple of days to allow her body to actually thaw because it was frozen. Although there were many different types of injuries on Jennifer's body, the main cause of that was actually strangulation, asphyxia due to strangulation, and the type was actually ligature strangulation. The manner of that was homicide. The number of wounds actually was too hard to count. There were multiple, and most of them appear to be what we call perimortem or postmortem. Perimortem means that there is some, looks like a vital reaction around them that happened as she was dying, and then postmortem says, well, there is no really vital reaction around these wounds, sharp force injury, therefore that happened after she was already deceased and there was no more circulation in the body. These two injuries were consistent and they looked completely post-mortem. Is with a freezer burn right in the middle of that wound, and that's actually one piece of skin that we did obtain with her body in the body pouch when she came to the office. Actually, there's kind of a slice cut out and came with it. There's a freezer burn in the middle, and then it's consistent with as her body was taken out of the freezer, that's where she was stuck, leaning to the left, stuck to the side of the freezer, so had to be cut out in order to take her out. Now, this was actually different than many other inside injuries that I'll address on her body because it appeared to be post-mortem. There is no vital reaction, and it's a very nice, precise cut through the cartilage. So it's lower than the bone, and it's through the cartilage, and it's a beautiful, regular cut that cut out the kind of like a 10 of the nose. The nasal bridge was completely gone. It's very regular. It was almost kind of, looks like a by design. And then the left breast actually had, I think, the most interesting injury because unlike the rest of the injuries, had a pattern to it. What I mean by pattern, unlike, let's say, that left arm, there was like a geographic slice taken out, cut out. This particular area that involved the nipple and areola, it was actually almost like a stellate. And if one would look at the margins of the wound, it had almost like a pinwheel appearance. It was almost like multiple cuts were made around it, and then finally the slice taken out. So that was the left breast area. On the right breast, there was actually a cluster of injuries that looked like cuts. It looks like the pattern was started. Like there were several kind of radiating cuts, like it's going to start in the pattern of pinwheel, but no, it was never finished. So that would be on the left breast. So that nipple and areola was still there.
For a bit over an hour, the medical examiner would present in excruciating detail each and every injury that was on Jennifer. As you can see on screen, the red markings indicate cut wounds, while the black represent blunt force trauma. I won't go over each injury in detail, as it would take far too long, but to try and summarize, on her head there were multiple cut wounds. On her eyelids, there were missing bits of skin that were sliced out. Part of her ear was missing, and her nose had been removed. There's multiple injuries to her neck, both internal and external, dried blood on her face, and multiple deep cuts that go down to the bone. On her back, more skin had been sliced off, missing tissue on her midline, freezer burns and abrasions around her upper buttock. There were freezer burns in the center of open wounds, and more areas of removed skin that are consistent with the body being removed from a freezer, but parts of her being stuck to the side. Her arms had multiple wounds that were perimortem, injuries sustained as she was dying, and they all appeared to be defensive in nature. There were stab wounds on her elbows, and parts of her skin that had tattoos, which were carefully removed. On her chest, there's clusters of stab wounds, nipples removed, pattern clusters that looked intentional and artistic, and patterns that looked like they had been started, but were not completed. On her abdomen were incredibly deep slice wounds, but clearly post-mortem. The medical examiner describes these as unusual, more clusters of stab wounds, skin flaps that looked like there had been an attempt to remove more chunks of tissue, and there were superficial wounds around her belly button. She has blunt force trauma located all over her body, her chin, head, shoulders, arms and legs, all of these sustained while she was alive. Sean Finnegan is charged with aggravated rape and kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and first-degree murder. Rebecca, although initially being viewed as a victim, is also hit with the same charges. As a side note, both of these individuals have a separate case regarding child sexual abuse towards minors under the age of 8. Evidence confirms that they both were involved with abusing and documenting the abuse of 2 young children that were frequently left in their care. Before Rebecca has a chance to go to trial, she takes a plea deal for first-degree murder, which puts her away for life in prison, but allows her to avoid the death penalty. In return for this plea deal, she must testify against Sean at his trial, where the death penalty for him was being sought. At Sean's trial, most of the state's case is built around the testimony of Rebecca Dishman, and everything you've heard in the video thus far is what the state was using against the man. His defense would take great issue with the fact that there's really no direct evidence linking Sean to these crimes, other than the fact that a body was found in a freezer in his property. They say he's for sure guilty of some things, such as kidnapping, but murder is not one of them. As you could imagine, when Rebecca is cross-examined, the defense do their best to pick her story apart. They start by bringing to light the fact that whilst Rebecca was in prison awaiting this trial, not only has she continued to send letters to Sean professing her love for him, but she also engaged in a sexual relationship with a corrections officer.
There was an affair with a corrections officer.
Yes,
Is that true?
that's true.
Okay. And that there were pictures that were taken on a phone or something like that with a corrections officer? Okay. And that at some point you reported that corrections officer for the affair?
Yes.
Okay. And also at some point you threatened some other women who may or may not have been involved in a similar kind of affair with that corrections officer. You threatened to kill them.
Yes.
Although Rebecca's threats against these other inmates never resulted in any sort of physical violence, the defense used this to say that she is a jealous person who absolutely can and will act upon aggressive impulses, especially if she feels threatened by other women who are involved with the same man she believes herself to be in a relationship with. As the cross-examination goes on, the aim of questioning attempts to portray Sean as a rather normal person whose life begun to drastically shift towards the more irregular after Rebecca's arrival. They highlight this by questioning Rebecca about belongings that she had brought with her when she moved in with Sean.
Did you bring some sex toys with you too?
Yes.
And were those sex toys like butt plugs?
Yes.
Okay.
Furthermore, during Rebecca's direct examination, she paints this picture that Sean was a severely controlling man who didn't allow her to own a phone. This is yet another issue that the defense claims to be untrue.
Was your phone broken?
It didn't have Wi-Fi data.
It didn't have Wi-Fi or data?
Yes.
Okay. That is a phone that Sean provided you also, right?
Not my first phone. It was gave to me, and then it got busted.
Your first, I'm sorry?
My first phone.
Got busted? So this was a different phone, right?
Yes.
And it's one Sean gave you?
No, different.
It's your first phone? I'm confused.
It was from another fiance.
Some other fiance bought you a phone?
Yes.
Okay. Were they paying for the service?
Yes.
And then they stopped paying for the service?
Yes.
Right? And so so then you didn't have a service?
No.
So Okay. Which fiance was that?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey? Okay. I don't know that one.
What the defense try to do here is show that Rebecca did in fact have access to numerous devices that were provided to her by other men. It's implied that Sean was not in fact restricting her access to devices due to a controlling nature. He merely didn't want to pay for a device that was likely to get damaged, and a service that she could use to communicate with other men. Something that he was aware she had been doing after she used his device to contact one of her exes, and the nature of those messages involved sexually explicit dialogue and images. The defense say he was already providing a roof over her head and food on the table, and that he had no obligation to buy her a phone as well. To bolster this idea that he wasn't controlling, they bring up that at no point was Rebecca locked in the house against her will. He never restricted her ability to leave whenever she wanted, and he was well aware that she would use the neighbors' phones to communicate with others, a fact that he wasn't overly happy with, but ultimately didn't drastically prevent her from doing. As the questioning goes on, we get an insight into a part of Rebecca's life that the state downplayed: witchcraft, Satanism, and Wiccan.
When is the first time that you performed any kind of ritual, say with Ramsey, that involved cutting or blood?
I never performed any of that with him.
You didn't? No. You asked him to, though, didn't you?
No.
Okay, which boyfriend was it then?
I believe Austin said that.
It was Austin?
He said that, I've never used any spells on him or anything like that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm really having trouble understanding you, but my question is that well, let me ask that. Let me rephrase. Cutting and drinking blood, those are parts of some satanic rituals and things that you have performed before. Correct?
No.
No. Okay, so if someone said that you did, say okay, but you admit that you were into Satanism, right?
Yes.
Okay. You've referred to yourself as a vampire before? In letters? No? You remember writing Sean once in jail and saying, "I'll be your little vampire"?
No.
No? Okay.
The implication here has to do with many of the wounds on Jennifer's body, some that the medical examiner described as intentional star-shaped patterns. By highlighting the fact that at one point in Rebecca's life she was a practicing Satanist, they argue that it more than likely would have been her who inflicted those wounds. Going a step further, they suggest that because Rebecca was a known cutter, and many of the surface cut wounds on Jennifer's body seem to be of a similar sort to that of a person who may cut themselves, it was likely Rebecca's doing. The final piece of her cross-examination, which I'll present, revolves around her general behavior and attitude towards Sean, both when they were living together and after she made authorities aware that there was a body in their freezer.
Basically, you lived there for about 9 or 10 months. Is that about right? Did friends come over and hang out?
His friends.
Really? Mahogany never came over?
That was part of his friends.
That was his friends?
Yes.
She's not your friend?
I mean, later grew on to her as a friend.
Right. So you just were there and his friends came over and hung out?
Yeah.
Where were your friends?
I couldn't see them.
Really?
Yes.
What are their names?
They were on Facebook and had lives and stuff on their own.
What are your friends' names?
I didn't have a lot of friends.
So you weren't allowed to see them, but you didn't have any friends to come see you?
No.
So that wasn't really true when you said you weren't allowed to see them. You just didn't have any friends to come see you. Is that right?
I mean, I could have had friends, but
You chose not to?
I wasn't really allowed.
Okay. I think you just testified that he made you climax over her while she was laying there.
Yes.
Right? And I think you said that he had to force you to climax.
Yes.
You mean he turned you on?
I wasn't turned on, but he forced me to orgasm.
I don't think that's how that works. I'm not a doctor, but okay, I'm sorry. Okay. When's the last time you had a job?
I believe it was 2017.
2017?
Yes.
And after that, you basically depended on your boyfriends or fiancés to pay for your way?
Yes.
Okay. And what you would do is, I guess, what did you do? Provide sex?
Yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, it was, even if it was kinky sex, it was stuff you were into?
Sometimes.
Okay. After you turned in Sean, right, you were in fear, is what your testimony was, right? You were in fear,
Yes.
correct? And so you had to get out because you were scared.
Yes.
Okay. And so then after you were arrested, it didn't take very long before you started writing letters to Sean again, right?
Right.
And you kept writing him letters, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is it?
I wrote him a letter.
It's a letter you wrote?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey baby, I just got your letter. I hope all is well. First off, I want you to know I made my decision. I want you to know I'm sorry for the lies and bullshit I've done. We have had our good and bad times together. I leave an apology and I'm sorry. I want to be yours and only yours. Baby, will you take me back? Your baby girl misses you. But anyway, I hope you forgive me and write me, baby girl. P.S. I love you, Daddy.
And that's one of many
Yes.
letters that you wrote, correct?
Yes.
Exclaiming your love for him and that you hope that he would forgive you and take you back, and right? Over and over again.
Yes, at the time.
A lot of times.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you ever recall him writing to you?
Yes.
He ever give you instructions on things you should do in those letters?
He had told me that I needed to tell the truth, and he was innocent.
And are you telling the truth today when you said you didn't do this?
Yes, I'm telling the truth.
There's one more section of cross-examinations that I'd like to highlight, where the defense attorney tries to show the jury that Rebecca is a flirtatious and functional adult who knows what she's doing and isn't this childlike, innocent girl that the state has made her out to be. But, between you and me, I'm mostly showing this part of the trial because I found this man's responses to be highly entertaining.
Did you know that Rebecca was a CNA?
Nope.
Never talked about that? Okay.
That would shock me.
She was, wasn't she?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, did you know that she took care of elderly people?
Nope.
Okay. You said something about her getting giddy. Was somebody coming around, or was it like a...
No, when she would come over to my apartment and my friend would be there, she would get laugh a little more giggly than she would, and she would do obvious signs of like flipping her hair,
like flirtation type stuff.
I wouldn't call it flirtatious.
Were they male friends? Were your friends male?
Yeah, I'm married.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, you can have friends that are girls if you're married, but they were male friends. She was flipping her hair and flirting. Acting giddy.
I wouldn't call it flirting.
But she acted giddy and different.
Yeah, she would laugh more and talk.
You guys used to hang out a little bit, right? I mean, y'all used to smoke pot together and stuff on occasion.
Not you all. I don't smoke pot.
You don't smoke pot?
No, sir.
Okay. So if there's text that suggests that?
There's no text that suggests I smoke pot.
Okay. Your wife did then, right?
Yes, my wife smokes pot.
Maybe that's what I'm confused. I might be confusing this text, so I
believe
apologize.
so.
I didn't.
I moved down here from Chicago to get straight with my life.
I got you. I didn't mean to accuse you. I apologize. I confused that.
This brings us to the closing arguments for this 6-day trial, where both sides would get the opportunity to present a final statement regarding their viewpoints. The state arguing that Sean is a calculated, manipulative, sadistic monster, and the defense rebutting that by claiming that it's their belief that Rebecca was the driving force behind these atrocious acts.
This guy was caught red-handed. Red-handed. You probably don't think about that phrase, but it comes from like 15th century. Red-handed meant that the person's hand actually was full of blood, and it was red, because they just committed the homicide. He was caught red-handed with a woman's body that this had been done to. This woman had been defiled, beaten, stabbed, raped, and choked. And he slept 8 feet from her. For 8 months, this woman in his freezer was his trophy. That's what she was. When she was discovered stripped of her breasts exposed, her breast cut, her nose cut off, defiled. Why? Why else would her shroud be opened if he wasn't doing exactly what Rebecca Dishman told you he was doing, going in there and masturbating on a regular basis to Jennifer Paxton as she was in the fetal position, frozen solid, 8 feet from where he slept. And I don't mean to be crass, but a homeless, addicted prostitute's probably the easiest person to kill on the planet. Probably the easiest human being to kill. Homeless, addicted prostitute. Think about it. I'm challenging you to think about that. Who else would be easier to kill than that? And I say all that to you, as I said, not to be crass and not to be dismissive of it, but to tell you why Jennifer was his perfect victim. She's the easiest person he could find to kill. Who speaks to their girlfriend with the terms bitch, slut, and whore? Because that's what you're going to see in the text. That's what he calls her. When she calls him master, daddy, and interestingly, Mufasa. And you may know who Mufasa is, if you know anything about Disney. He's the Lion King.
And the state is trying to present her as this mentally handicapped young lady who's sweet and innocent and is somehow a victim, even though they allowed her to plead guilty to all of the first-degree murder and kidnapping and rape. So don't let them base their entire case, which they have, on Rebecca Dishman and the fact that they're trying to tell you that she's incapable of lying. The fact that the DA just stood up here and said that Rebecca Dishman is incapable of lying.
Rebecca Dishman's abilities are simple, and they don't allow her to lie.
That's a bold statement to make about their witness, isn't it? I mean, I've heard about bolstering witnesses, but my witness can't lie. Wow. So your first-degree murderer, rapist, kidnapper doesn't have the ability to lie. She can set up fake Facebook accounts and she can carry on conversations and relationships outside of her normal relationship, but she doesn't have the ability to lie. So be careful. That's what I'm saying. The state is overplaying their hand a little bit here. And if they have to overplay, you have to ask yourself why. They've got a body in the freezer. They've got someone who's clearly tortured. I mean, there's no denying that this young lady is the victim here. But that's not what this trial has been about. We haven't really heard that much about Jennifer Paxton. We've mostly heard about how Rebecca Dishman is a victim. So let's talk more about what we know about her before she met Sean Finnegan. She moved around several different places, got kicked out of all of them, needed a place to stay. Mostly it was with people she called fiancés, right? She's 22 years old. She has 4 or 5 fiancés. She uses the word fiancé because she moves in with every single one of them because they give her a place to live and they feed her. She doesn't work. She stays at home. She thinks she called herself a stay-at-home girlfriend, right? She's lazy. She doesn't want to do anything. She stays at home and she lets other people take care of her. That's her MO. That's what she does. And what makes people want to take care of people? If you're sweet and you're simple and you seem like you need help and somebody take care of you, what did all the witnesses say? She just seemed like someone who needed to be taken care of. That's how she presents herself. Because there's a lot of other things going on in the background, isn't there? There's all these other things happening. She's clearly able to lie and do all these other things, but she presents herself to these people in a certain way to accomplish what she does. She's incredibly manipulative. And we know this because she's reaching out and trying to carry on a relationship, at least through Facebook or something, on someone else's phone with an ex-boyfriend, Ramsey's. We heard that. She's into kinky sex, right? Before Sean. She told us that on direct. On direct, maybe cross. I don't remember, but she told us that on the stand. We also know that because she showed up to Sean's house with her own sex toys and butt plugs. I don't know if you know what butt plugs are. I'm not a sex expert. I'm not Dr. Ruth or Dr. Joyce Brothers, and that probably shows my age that I'm using those as references. But I'm pretty sure butt plugs are something you stick in your butt. I'm just going to go out there. But she brought that stuff with her to his house. So we keep talking about her being sweet and innocent and she can't lie. And what really comes down is who's in control. That's what this whole trial seems to be about, is who's kind of controlling this relationship.
And there is an absolute dominance in this relationship, and he's the dominant one. He's the master. Who has photos of them ejaculating on their girlfriend and taking a picture of her face with your ejaculate on it? Who has a phone of you? Who has a picture on their phone of your girlfriend after you defecated on her and taken a picture while she walls around and taken it and left it on your phone? Think about the nature of that relationship.
If you look at that picture of her that looks like she's rolling around in feces or something that the DA keeps liking to show you, she took that picture. She took that picture and sent it to Sean. That's why it's on this phone. You can see it from the angle of the shot. She's into Satanism. The state wants to gloss over that, but she comes in and says she's into Satanism and a Wiccan and all these other things. Her dad was a preacher. We're dealing with a horrific murder here, with a body that is cut up and sliced, and there is a crucifix that's cut off of her arm. We know she was a cutter. There's tons of little cuts all over this body. So what they want to do is make this Sean's fantasy, right? Hookers are the easiest ones to kill. So this is Sean's fantasy. So what do we know about Sean before her? I'll put Finnegan up here. Sean lived in the same place for a couple of years. Same place, right? Sean worked a full-time job, more than a full-time job. And during the busy times of the year, every day he worked. That's the testament. He took care of his 80-something-year-old mother who's in hospice care and ailing and dying. He's picking up her medicine. He's going to work from 5 in the afternoon till 5 o'clock in the morning, just about every day. That's 12 hours a day, not counting driving. So 12 to 13 hours a day most days. He's not at that place. He's not at that apartment. But he's got a mother to take care of. So it seems reasonable that he might want a little help. If a girl is there and could stay there, that would be helpful. That would be a reason for her to be there. She's a CNA.
Essentially, at this point of the defense's closing argument, they say other than occasionally hiring the services of prostitutes and having a few girlfriends at the same time, there's really nothing that has been presented as evidence that can support the idea that Sean could have been the one to commit this murder. This leads into their theory about what actually happened.
Sean, what was he supposed to do, honestly? Right? If you believe, what his statement was, where he comes home, or she hits her, or he comes home and she strangled her, what's he supposed to, it is his house. It's in his house. What's he supposed to do? I don't really have a good answer for that, because my thought is that if he called the police, he would be sitting right there. He'd still be sitting right there. So if he's working 12 or 13 hours a day and he sleeps only 5 or 6 hours a day, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for him to be controlling Rebecca and setting up all this stuff for this murder that he had absolutely no reason to commit. No reason to commit. He's living his life. The only thing that changed about his life, he's already got girls that come over and have sex with him. That's what we learned, right? He's already got girls that will come over and have sex with him. and help him take care of his mother. Even after Rebecca's there, girls come home with them and they have threesomes. And they happen and everybody moves on with their life. That's his life. That's what's going on. We may not agree with the lifestyle or whatever, but that's the lifestyle he was living. That didn't change until she entered the picture. Sean Finnegan only knew Rebecca Dishman for 3 to 4 weeks, and suddenly there was a dead body in his apartment. It's easy to point the finger at the 50-year-old white dude over there. It looks kind of creepy, right? It's just really easy to point the finger at it, and she knew that. She knew it when she started. And she's the one who has the reason to do it and has a history of jealousy and overreaction. We heard about that too, because what happened after she got arrested? She started a relationship with a corrections officer to show that she's overreactive in a weird psychotic sort of way. When she finds out that maybe this correction officer is having some kind of flirtation or relationship with other inmates, she threatens to kill them. She admitted that, didn't she? She threatened to kill people because they were having a relationship, or whatever, perceived relationship, with a corrections officer that she perceived that she was having a relationship with. And her reaction was to threaten to kill them. And the state's position is, well, she didn't do anything about it. She's in jail. There is something wrong with her brain. The DA wants to make you think that she's simple or whatever, but that's not what's wrong with her brain. There's something deviant going on in there. And she's somehow been able to manipulate this entire process. Don't let her do it. Don't let her do it.
Following jury deliberation, Sean is found guilty on 9 of the 13 charges laid against him, including murder during an attempt to commit aggravated rape. After a short sentencing hearing, Sean Finnegan receives the punishment of death by lethal injection. It's at this point of the video that I've finished presenting the happenings of this trial, and will now go over some additional thoughts and information regarding the case. In my opinion, the most interesting element to the case was the characterization of Rebecca Dishman by both sides of the argument. The state claiming she's a childlike, innocent victim who got caught up in a very nasty situation and didn't know how to handle that, whereas the defense show her to be a murderous, sadistic, manipulative killer who submissively controlled Sean, and following the revelation that there was a body in the freezer, she managed to manipulate the DA into cutting her a deal which would see her escape the death penalty. My view on Rebecca is a complicated one. It's difficult to discern the truth of her character based on a few clips of trial footage, because ultimately, her, like all of our existences, is far more complicated than a quick view looking at our actions presented in a controlled environment such as a trial. There could be so much behind some of the happenings here. Her inability to maintain a job, maintain relationships that are healthy, her interest in Satanism, her childlike presentation, her flat affect when describing intense events. To go on, her lack of action before and after the death of Jennifer, her claims of love for Sean long after knowing, by her account, that he's a murderer, and the question, how much of this dom-sub relationship was consensual and trusting, or overbearing and unexpected? If I were to take a stab at it, I most definitely think we have some form of neurodivergence running through her mind, but that doesn't help to explain more sinister and troubling details, such as the charges for abusing children under the age of 8. Maybe one could say that she is so low-functioning that she will submissively, without question, bend to the will of those who are helping her survive day to day, but that theory just doesn't sit right with me. If I'm to speak more from feelings rather than facts, quoting the defense attorney, I do believe there's something going on in her mind that's not quite right. But as mentioned, that's me speaking from emotion rather than logic, and I'm fully aware that my perspective is not a complete one that can understand the way every other mind can work. There's so many minds out there, I have no perspective of how they operate, no chance of understanding how they process information in a way different to how I do. So although my opinion of her is quite low, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there's more here than meets the eye. I'm not going to waste my energy thinking about Sean Finnegan for too long either. If I am to look at him in the most favourable light and believe his story, I don't think I need to state the obvious. But what an absolute nincompoop. It's beyond baffling to me that he expects anyone to believe that he slept 8 feet away from a frozen body for 8 months. He laid his head down on the pillow after a long day at work and comfortably dozed off while the murderer lay next to him. I have so many questions, Sean. Why didn't you contact the police? Why didn't you kick Rebecca out? Why didn't you contact 911 whilst Jennifer was still alive but injured? Heck, why didn't he even try to dispose of the body in the middle of the night to avoid any possibility of it being discovered on his premises? The man is sick, I have no doubt. He defecated on Rebecca while she was locked in a cage and acting like a dog, for God's sake. I might be showing my lack of open-mindedness here, but that's sick to me. That's one fetish I have no desire in trying to understand. What type of mental illness exactly haunts him? I suppose we'll forever be left to speculate on that one, seeing as there was a significant lack of expert witnesses presenting mitigating factors during the penalty phase of his death penalty trial. Apparently, the reason for this was due to his defiance against talking to psychologists. He didn't allow any evaluations to be conducted. Whatever the reason for no one defending him in his moment of truth, I highly doubt those experts could have said anything to sway the jury away from voting death. Turning my attention to Jennifer Paxton, the victim, a person in this case who is the most important, yet easily the least discussed throughout this entire trial. From what I learned, we don't have a scenario here like in other cases I've worked on, where there's glowing report after glowing report about how beautiful she was. Jennifer made many poor decisions over her life, many hardships were faced, and long before her death, her family was already in a state of worry and turmoil based on how Jennifer conducted herself day to day. Jennifer's difficult life built to a chilling end that no one deserves. No matter what sort of poor decisions one has made, she faced a fate, a tragic endpoint that marked the close of a tragic tale. Within this, though, what stood out to me was that she was deeply loved by the ones who knew her, a testament to the strength of family bonds. It's so easy to look at drug addicts and throw them to the wayside without a second thought. Their hopeless souls, lost to a pit of darkness that many never return from. But what is most easy to overlook is the battle that those around them face. The burden of unconditional love is ever present here. There were many family members and friends who mourned her passing. People who shed countless tears for her long before she went missing, and are now more broken than they already were, than they thought they could ever possibly be at the horrible reality in the way she died. The way she left this world was far worse than their deepest fears could imagine, and that sort of tragedy is what I truly find difficult to comprehend.
Your Honor, I wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our family. Our lives have forever been changed. It is always hurtful to lose someone you love, but it is a different kind of hurt and pain to lose someone you love the way our family lost Jennifer. We didn't just lose Jennifer. She was taken from us. When Jennifer went missing, we all looked all over town for her. Gail, Mill, David, and Brittany looked on the south side of Knoxville, and the rest of us took the north side. We looked for her not just for a day or two. We looked for her for months, day after day. Her grandmother who she called Mom, would call me almost every day to ask if I had seen Jennifer. It was so hard on us We knew Jennifer wouldn't go for days and not contact me or one of us. Patty, Jennifer's mother, received a call no mother should ever have to get. They found Jennifer. Patty was so devastated. When she called me, I couldn't understand what she was saying. Then when I finally did understand, I, like the rest of our family, went into complete shock. Her mother, Patty, didn't make it through the loss and devastation. She died with a broken heart. Before Patty passed away, she asked myself and the other ladies here with me today to promise her we would be here in court every day for her and Jennifer to show Jennifer was loved, is loved, and forever will be loved and missed. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm Michelle, first cousin to Jennifer's mother, Patricia. First, I'd like to tell you about Jennifer. She was kind and loving. She cared about other people, even strangers. She grew up with a tough life, as many of us did. The difference between her and us is that she never seemed to make peace and get past the hardships of her childhood or upbringing. She longed to have a typical, normal American family. She trusted too easily and too much. Jennifer's mother tried the best she knew how in raising Jen, but in her own words, she made a ton of mistakes, especially with Jennifer. Patty was desperate for Jennifer to not make the same mistakes that she had made herself, like becoming a mother at just 15 years old. Because of this, she was way too hard on Jennifer. Again, her words. Not allowing her to have friends. She wasn't allowed to play in the neighborhood like her brothers or hang out with others after school unless it was with family. This is why Jennifer lovingly clung to her grandmother. She felt loved with her. She was allowed to be more of a child with a normal life when she was with her. So naturally, Jennifer had more of a mother-daughter relationship with her than she did with her mother. When Jennifer went missing, it didn't go unnoticed by her family, even though she had become part of the homeless community. Many of us searched for her for months, as well as looking at every person we passed as we went about our daily lives, hoping to spot her somewhere, as we always had in the past. Patty, like many other parents of addicts, was terrified of getting that call or knock on her door to tell her that Jennifer had overdosed and was gone. That call came in August of 2020, only it was much more horrifying than she could have imagined. I spent much of the time after Jennifer went missing with her mother until her passing, only 16 months later. She suffered finding out Jennifer's demise after 9 months of searching. Patty was in poor health, but was haunted by the things we were told by investigators of what those people did to her daughter. She blamed herself. She stated and questioned regularly how if she had been a better mom, or if she had tried one more time to help her, if she could have prevented what happened to Jennifer. She thought Jen fell victim because maybe she didn't feel loved enough, or because she had been so hard on her in her life. Patty had nightmares every night of Jennifer crying out in pain or for mercy. She imagined Jennifer begging them to stop and let her just come home to her family. Patty died in the hospital, still crying and suffering over what happened in the Finnegan Dishman home those 4 or 5 days. Patty had battled health issues for years, but after losing a second child in such a horrifying manner, She had just given up. She was tired. Tired of regret. Tired of the nightmares, the day thoughts. Tired of suffering and missing her daughter, Jennifer Gail Paxton.